Thank you for tuning in to our channel. Please subscribe. This happened last year, and I am still traumatized. It started as a dream. A new house, a new beginning, a chance to build a life that felt safe and our own. The first time we unlocked the door, the smell of fresh paint and old would mix together, and for a moment, it felt like hope. My girlfriend and I told ourselves that this was the start of everything we had been waiting for. We had rescued a small cat, Bella, and she darted through the rooms like she already knew this was home. But dreams have cracks. Ours began next door. The house that stood beside ours was unfinished, abandoned in the middle of renovation. Its windows were dark, its garden overgrown, its silence too deep. The fence that once separated it from our yard had been torn down and never replaced. That left nothing between us and the emptiness of that property. Nothing to stop whoever, or whatever, moved there. The first night, we sat outside in the garden, laughing about how grown up it felt to own a home. Then, without warning, laughter died on our lips. I looked up, and there he was. A man, standing perfectly still in the upstairs window of the abandoned house. He didn't move. He didn't wave. He just stared. His face was pale, emotionless, and fixed on us with an intensity that drained the warmth out of the air. It was one of those moments when you and your partner look at each other, speechless, wondering what the other is thinking, feeling, fearing. Then my girlfriend turned her gaze back to the window and began filming. I don't know if it was a defense mechanism, a way to capture the unknown, or perhaps a subconscious attempt to immortalize the moment before fear took over. We sat frozen for 30 minutes until, unable to bear it any longer, we fled indoors. He never blinked. He never looked away. At first, we tried to convince ourselves it was harmless. A curious neighbor. A strange coincidence. Surely a man wouldn't sit in his window for hours just staring at his new neighbors. But the second night, he was there again. And the third. And the fourth. Always watching, always silent, as though he had been waiting for us long before we arrived. Then came the men. They appeared suddenly, cutting through the abandoned yard as though it belonged to them. They stepped into our garden without hesitation, carrying stolen goods as casually as groceries. One offered us dishwasher tablets as if it were a friendly gesture. When we refused, their eyes lingered too long. They smiled too easily. And then they vanished back into the shadows of the property next door. Days blurred into weeks, and their presence only grew stronger. We would hear footsteps outside long after midnight, voices whispering too low to understand, whistles that cut through the silence and sank under our skin. Sometimes, they would just stand in our garden, staring up at the windows, saying nothing at all. It was as if they were trying to intimidate us, to make us feel unwelcome. And I couldn't help but wonder why. Why were they doing this? What did they want from us? Was there something hidden in the derelict house next door? Or was it just a twisted game for them to watch us squirm in our own home? Either way, we were losing ours. Every night I'd wake up to the eerie feeling of being observed, of having no privacy. I'd glance at the window beside our bed and imagine eyes peering in, trying to catch a glimpse of my life. It was unsettling to say the least. Then one night, the unthinkable happened. The power went out and we found ourselves plunged into darkness. The usual sounds of the night seemed louder, more menacing. And as we sat huddled together in the flickering light of my phone, I realized how vulnerable we were. What if they decided to take advantage of the darkness? What if they broke in while we were trapped in the pitch-black abyss of our home? I couldn't shake off the feeling of dread that settled in my stomach. It was primal, instinctive, and it told me we needed to get out. Of there, we packed a small bag with essentials, just in case. Flashlights, water bottles, some food. We didn't want to leave our home, but we also couldn't bear another night of terror. So we made the painful decision to leave our home, to abandon the house we had poured our hopes and dreams into. It felt like a defeat, a surrender to fear. And where would we go? The thought of exposing our loved ones to the same nightmare was unbearable. As the days passed, we started taking medication to cope with the anxiety that was eating away at us. Each day brought new challenges, new evidence that our lives were spiraling out of control. We couldn't eat properly, couldn't sleep through the night. Our whole world had shrunk to the four walls of our home. Then one afternoon, we heard a bang. Not just any bang, but a bang that shattered the fragile peace we had managed to carve out for ourselves. The sound reverberated through our bodies, sending a jolt of adrenaline straight to our hearts. We clung to each other, our bodies shaking, our minds racing. What was that noise? Had they finally decided to invade our space? The fear was palpable, suffocating us with its icy grip. As we held each other, paralyzed by terror, the seconds ticked by agonizingly slow. Then we heard movement outside, footsteps approaching our front door. Our breaths caught in our throats. Should we hide? Should we run? What should we do? Just then, the doorbell rang, piercing the silence like a shard of glass. We froze, our eyes wide with terror. Who could be visiting us at this hour? Was it them? The thought sent shivers down my spine. My hands trembled as I reached for the peephole, my heart pounding against my ribs. I peered through the small glass window, trying to make out the figure on the other side. It was a man we had never seen before. He stood there with a slight smile, holding what looked like a crowbar in his hand. But what really caught my eye was the direction he was looking. He wasn't looking at me through the peephole. Instead, his gaze was fixed on the window beside me, the very window that had become our window of fear. His eyes seemed to bore into it, as if he could see right through the glass. It was a strange, unnerving sight that sent a chill down my spine. Without thinking, I turned away from the peephole and hurried to lock the door. As I did, I couldn't help but glance back at the window. There, staring back at me, was the man from the window next door. He was closer than I had ever seen him before. The distance that had always separated us seemed to have vanished. In that moment, our eyes met and a surge of adrenaline shot through me. It was a brief moment, but it was enough to send a wave of terror crashing over me. Quickly, I tore my gaze away and rushed to the other side of the room, hoping he couldn't see me. Trembling, I dialed 999 and whispered urgently, "I think someone's trying to break in." But even as I did, I knew it might not be enough. This wasn't just a random home invasion. This was him and his accomplices, the ones who had tormented us for weeks. They were here to finish the job.